Hello and welcome to Jon and Louise on Life.
Today we've got a new item where we're going to be looking at some news stories that you may have missed.
We talked to Jon and Lou about their ministry Bottled Up, which is impacting the lives of thousands of drinkers and their families around the world.
We're going to be looking at vaccine passports and what that could possibly mean to all of us.
And we're going to talk about lockdown haircuts.
See you in a minute.
Well, welcome to a new feature we're trying out on Jon and Louise on Life. And it's looking at some of the news items we might have missed over the last few weeks. So the first one takes us to Merseyside, where Merseyside police have just started a campaign saying that being offensive is an offence. And they went to great expense to get the ad van, the banner on the back of the van, get the police officers on the street, and off they went to the Asda car park with this thing saying it is an offence to be offensive. Thankfully, social media caught onto it pretty quick and got onto the police and said, actually, it's not an offence to be offensive. And the police have turned around and apologised, or sort of apologised. They sent out a bit of an apology from Superintendent Martin Earl, and then tried to justify their actions. Anyway, we'll have to watch out for the police there, that they don't overstep their mark. Secondly, the police perhaps overstepping their mark again. This is a pub car park in Nottinghamshire. And there's a thing called Church on the Streets that hold a church service on a Saturday in the pub car park next to Aldi there. And they were doing that one Saturday when the police came along and said what they were doing was illegal and fined them £10,000. And the church obviously is appealing about this, but the police said that a pub car park is not a place of worship. So what is a place of worship? A place with a spire, stained glass windows? What about a church meeting in a school? That's not a place of worship, is it? Can we be fined for meeting there? So this is, again, just causing all sorts of ruffling feathers, and the police just overstepping their mark once again. One final story, a more local story this time. This is the Mars rover landing on Mars, NASA's recent mission to Mars. So how's that local, do you say? Well, the fabric that makes the parachute that you can see in the picture just there comes from Tiverton. So the fabric was made in Tiverton, put together by NASA in America, but made in Tiverton. So it's local. And actually, some clever boffins have worked out there's actually a code in the parachute there which says, "Dare mighty things." Dare mighty things, and which they have done by sending this mission to Mars. So that's great. Some other couple of interesting things there on the Mars rover. They've taken up a plaque which is dedicated to those people who have given so much to fight the COVID epidemic worldwide. And you might be able to see what that is. I'll make that a bit clearer. That is actually a snake on a pole, which is the symbol of the healthcare in the United States. And of course, we know where they get that from. They get it from the Bible, don't they? The children of Israel in the wilderness start sinning. Out comes some snakes, start biting them. They repent, and Moses makes an image of a snake, puts it up on a pole, and they look and live. They look to the pole and they live. And what NASA have done is they've put a globe on top of that. So that's interesting. This world is resting on the hope that is Jesus, because actually that snake in one sense represented Jesus. So there's a message on the Mars rover that says this world depends upon Jesus. Interesting. I don't know if they did that on purpose. But there's another thing. They thought actually they'd put a message up there for any passing little Martians that might be hiding behind the rocks, or perhaps any sort of spaceships that are passing by. They'll send a sort of a peaceful message from Earth to anybody who might see it. And there's bacteria, and there's some flowers and dinosaurs and people and colours and all sorts of things on there. But the message: two worlds, one beginning. So I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there we go. Two worlds, one beginning. And that's their message to any passing alien. Well, the world of Mars, I suppose, and the world of the Earth. It is two worlds. And indeed, they did indeed have one beginning. So how right they are. Anyway, that's enough for me this week. I hope you enjoyed those items. Now on with the rest of the show.
That was really good. I didn't know about the police putting up their own sign and making their own rules and regulations.
It's a little bit worrying. The police don't know actually know what the law is, isn't
Yeah,
it? Really,
it is. It is a little bit worrying
Yeah.
because that means that any police, anywhere they like, can make up anything they want to. I tell you what, it reminds me of.
Yeah, go on.
At the beginning of lockdown last year, when everybody was, freaking out and worrying about shopping in supermarkets and things like that, our local supermarket decided to put up giant metal barriers up and down every aisle, which meant that although we had a one-way system, which is fine and that's a really sensible thing to do, it meant that if you missed something, you couldn't go back for it. Okay, so that's fair enough. But it also meant that if there was a fire, you couldn't get out.
They were breaking health and safety.
They were breaking health and safety. So I reckon it was just some kind of rule that they had. They had this meeting. They went, right, we're going to lock down this place and we're going to make it as safe as possible. And nobody considered that a lot of people that live in Seaton are really elderly. So they're not going to go up and down and up and down and up and down until they can get out. They're going to get out the closest way. It would have been carnage.
I remember as well, we were in there, I was probably shopping for my parents, you were shopping for your parents, and I was on ahead and I'd forgotten stuff, so I was phoning you for the back of the store going, can you pick up
Have you gone past that bit yet? I found the whole experience intimidating, scary, unnerving, all the worst aspects of it. And I think it was just somebody overreacting and doing their own thing, a bit like the police. But we're going to have to watch stuff like that because, we don't want a police state. We don't want troops with guns policing everything. Yeah, not on your Nelly. Anyway,
yes,
we better move on.
Jon and Lou.
Yeah, great interview.
Yeah, the work of Jon and Lou is tremendous. What they do right across the world, working with addicts and the families of addicts, which is quite unusual.
Yeah.
Anyway, find out more about it in this interview. So we're delighted today to be joined by Jon and Lou, and it is actually Jon and Lou chatting with Jon and Lou today. So we're delighted to have you here and to talk about the work, especially of Bottled Up. So let's dive straight in and ask you about Bottled Up.
Okay, Bottled Up is it's an online community which deals with, there are two parts to it. There's or almost two communities. There's the community, which are the drinkers, is to help people who have a problem with alcohol, whether that problem be themselves or whether it be their partner or their loved one, or it's, for some cases, it's maybe son, daughter, husband, wife, whatever. So we have two communities. We have a community for drinkers and we have a community for families. And what we have is we have a program in either side. Okay,
and it's online.
It's a free community.
Yeah. We started it because I lived with an alcoholic for years, and I was in full-time ministry. And you become very, very secretive, and it's really hard to reach out because of the stigma, particularly hard in the church, actually, because the stigma is even greater. And we know that people don't go to doctor's surgeries and stuff. So online is a safe, confidential way of doing things. And we started it, 12 years ago? Yeah. And people said, oh, no, you can't do it online. And how can people be helped online? But we knew they could. And of course, now we don't have to make that argument at all. Because everybody does life online.
Ironically, it's very much come into its own.
Yeah.
I became very interested in the therapeutic use of the internet many years ago when I was teaching at university and I was using distance learning. And I thought we could use this in a therapeutic way as well. And we built 247 Help Yourself, which was a forerunner of Bottled Up. And that seemed to work quite well. And when Lou and I met, we combined it with the families as well, because 247 was initially purely and simply for the drinkers.
And you were an alcoholic, weren't you? Very bad alcoholic.
I was an extremely good alcoholic. Yes, I was an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic for many years. I in fact, at the end of my drinking, I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. I was told I had brain damage, liver damage, and I had 6 months to live if I continued to take alcohol or drugs. That was 36 years ago, and I haven't had a drink since.
So is it available for everybody, or do
Everybody
people be referred to you in some way?
Nope.
No, you just
you find it online. If you search through Google, you will find us.
Just bottle-up.com.
Interestingly, we were just looking at the stats before this call, and we found that there were, since the 1st of January this year, people have come from 46 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah, we've had over 7,000 visitors. During that time, we've had somewhere in the region of about 50 to 60 new members, and again, about 100 people have signed up for ebooks. We have about 4,000 people in our mailing list, and we have 1,000 members. So the reach is quite large, and that's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of it. And funnily enough, during this COVID season, we are actually beginning to appreciate that reach now.
Yeah. So what about you've referred to COVID there? Has that made the situation with problem drinking worse, do you think?
Funnily enough, it's yes and no. Because for some people, what's happened is that they have sort of sat down and sort of considered their life and looked at what's important about it. And for some people, they are coming out of drinking. For other people, the frustration, the misery of being locked up all the time has actually made it worse. So it's almost like polarized it, So we have a bit of both.
Yeah. So when they come across your website and they're looking for some kind of help, what are you actually offering them? What help do they get?
Okay. Well, there's a program that we used to release every 2 weeks. It's over 6 months, isn't it? Yeah. So what you find, and I found this, it's very hard living with an alcoholic. Now I'm talking as a wife of an alcoholic. Now he died of cancer now, which is why I'm with John. But the hardest thing is, I knew my husband loved me, and everything that usually works in a loving relationship, which is you're destroying me, the family, and everything else, please don't do it. Or if I just said to my husband, I don't like this, could you stop it? Generally, he would try and help. But actually what I discovered, and it took me 30 years to discover it, was that what you do, actually, you push the very buttons of guilt and shame that send them off to the drink in the first place. And that little sentence for me was about 20 years work in terms of understanding what was going on. So that was a really tough one. So when people come, they're looking for the magic dust to fix their drinker. And we know that. So the first thing we say is to stop and start caring for yourself, because if you don't put energy into your own world, then you're going to be burnt out just trying to fix them. Then the middle bit is, you can talk about the middle bit.
There's a whole heap of things that can exacerbate the drinking, and very often people get caught up in them. We call them the 4 Ps. It's about policing, picking a fight, punishing, and pleading. And none of these actually work. If they worked, we'd say, yeah, do more of that. So people tend to, if punishing hasn't worked, then we'll up the punishment, and you go, no, it just doesn't work. And so we say, stop that, and it gives you space. We talk about coming out of the secrecy. So what we try to do with Bottled Up with families is we try to empower them. Because if you look at the statistics, what you find is that there are 2 or 3 really stark statistics with people who live with drinkers. And one is the high rates of anxiety, high rates of depression, and high rates of NHS use whether that be GP or etc. And if you can empower people, then the anxiety goes down, the depression goes down. It's a very clear statistic, but unfortunately, there's not an awful lot of statutory help for people who live with drinkers. So that's the first thing that we do. In the second part of the program, what we do is we get them to actually talk to their drinker, but we don't have them talking to the drinker at the beginning. We don't have them doing the intervention. We leave that till later, and we do it in a very subtle way. And we give them tools to do that. We give them tools like SHARE, which starts to look at what the alcohol issue is. It breaks it down into, safety, health, ambition, relationships, economics, And so they look at drinking in that, rather than say, you're drinking too much. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, yes, I am. And the pantomime starts. They say, look, the consequences of your drinking are, and go into that. And then there's the other acronym that we use, which is LOVE, which is letting the negative things happen, optimizing your time with them when they're sober, valuing the person, because sometimes the anger, you get clouded from, valuing that particular person. We try to bring that back in, and then encouragement. So that we use deliberately positive acronyms here. For the drinkers, what we do is we try to simulate what would happen in a counselling session. So we use sort of unique tools that we've built, and they go through these unique tools. And again, it's a 4-week program with sort of follow-up. And that's basically what is there. I mean, it is a structured program. It is coming out of, Lou is a counsellor. I'm a psychologist. Lou lived with a drinker. I was a drinker. So we have these kind of 4 aspects that are distilled within this program. And we may not be a unique couple here, but there's not an awful lot of this kind of combination around, and that is all distilled into Bottled Up. The stats seem to suggest that alcohol affects at least 3 to 5 other people, at least. So if you get 1 million alcoholics, you've got 5 million people who are being affected by it without any help. And at this moment in time in Britain, you reckon there's about 1 million people who are actually in the alcoholic category.
From a practical point of view, then, if somebody wants to do this course, is it private, or are they in a big group session, or
it's private,
one-to-one with you, or
they engage with the program,
right?
Which they do themselves. It's us. We sit here like this. It's done audios of us. Basically, we do it all. So we've sat there and we talk them through. So they do that themselves. There's a forum, which is a wonderful thing to look at. So they kind of get involved in that. We turn up very, very regularly with videos like this. We do something maybe once a week or once a fortnight. We don't script it. We just turn up as us. So we are constantly interacting with them by putting material in. And then you do private practice, don't you? You actually work with them.
Yeah, I'll do a one-to-one, but that's we have to charge for, because we can't do it with we have 1,000 members. That's just impossible.
Yeah,
everything else is free of charge. It's
Everything.
available to everybody that
Absolutely.
wants to access it, and you don't have to have any kind of faith or religious belief at all.
No, absolutely
none.
no. What we do have. And now, this was last May, we got that. We have a thing called Beauty for Ashes.
Good. I was just going to ask you about that, because you've got many strings to your bow, but I wanted to talk about Beauty for Ashes as well. So please tell us about that.
Sure. I crop up a lot more because Jon was doing all the stuff behind the scene, and that took a long time. But Beauty for Ashes is finding faith in a time of crisis. Our first thing which we do together is to try and clear the obstacles that people think they know what Christianity is, but they don't. So we talk about, religion versus Christianity, God the scapegoat, God the judge, and we kind of try and break down all of the myths. And then we have different sections. We talk about how to basically, I'm very passionate about making the gospel accessible in allegories and things that people really understand. So I take them by the hand and tell them about Christianity, and then there's bits about anxiety, depression, drinking, So I love that, because we can talk about God quite freely. So we bring them to Bottled Up, and then we take them by the hand and send them to Beauty for Ashes. So I feel we've got a complete package now.
Yeah. Okay, there's one last thing I would like to sort of talk about. I know you haven't asked me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. And that was about we've tried, but just before COVID, we were looking at how we could work with churches, to use what we had. We have really good resources here. How can we get them into churches? And that's something that we're still looking.
No, we're still not really through on that one.
We're not really sure how to do this at all, but we feel that we have something here, which actually, and because it's now free, that was the last barrier that we removed. We charge a very small fee. Now we charge nothing, and because of that, surprise, surprise, we've got many more members than we had before, shock. But so we're still looking at how we could possibly do that. So if anybody's got any ideas, then answer on a postcard, please, and just send it to us. We'd be more than happy to figure it out.
Jon and Lou, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch up again sometime soon.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jon and Lou, for your time today. Jon and Lou do a tremendous work, and if you'd like to support them in any way, get in touch and see how you can be a blessing. Anyway, vaccine passports. The EU are in the process of putting vaccine passports into place in Europe so people can travel for work and for leisure around Europe. And they're getting on doing that. The British government, thankfully, at the moment, are still talking about it. But vaccine passports, what do you think?
Well, there's nothing new about vaccine passports. I mean, when we had to get vaccinations to go to Turkey on holiday, we had cholera and typhoid injections, and we had to have certificates to say that we'd had them before we were allowed into Turkey. Do you remember that?
We had one in each arm. For some reason, they did one in each arm.
I don't know why. Couldn't move our arms.
We couldn't move our
After a couple of
arms for 2
hours, it was
days.
really bad. I understand this need to have a passport to travel overseas. It makes logical sense. We are concerned about people coming into our country bringing in different variants of the COVID virus. And so they're obviously going to be concerned about British people travelling around the globe, bringing COVID with them as well. So I think it's just something that we're going to have to do. If you want to go on holiday abroad, you want to travel, you're going to have to be vaccinated. And I think it's likely to just be one of those things that we have to live with.
But my worry and my question is this just the thin end of the wedge?
You're talking about passports for going to the cinema or something like that. Yeah.
So when I want to take you out on a date night,
Woo! Yeah.
McDonald's.
Yeah, lovely. I'm a cheap date. I know.
Then, do we need a passport to go to the theatre, to the cinema, to a restaurant?
If you want to get on the bus or go on a train, are you going to have some kind of travel permit? I think it's going to be incredibly hard. I think that is really bad news because there are people that cannot have the vaccine for medical reasons. And that means that their quality of life is going to be severely restricted because they aren't going to be allowed to go anywhere if that's the case. And while I understand people's fears about that sort of thing, if that happens in our country and we cannot go to anywhere public, including church,
well, that's
then,
potential.
That is real cause for concern.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it must be a matter of conscience whether you take the vaccine or not. Entirely up to you. And I respect it if you don't, and I respect it if you do. You've thought about it, you've prayed about it, and you've worked it out whether it's right to or not. Some people really can't bring themselves to do it because of concerns about what's in the vaccine. It's not properly tested, but also, ethical issues around vaccines generally. Where they come from, the fetal tissue that's been involved in its original manufacture, and that sort of thing. So I respect people's opinions. So no, we must have freedom of conscience in this country
to do exactly what we want.
I think it's something that is going to come up time and time and time again. This is not going away.
No.
COVID is not going away. We've got the vaccine is temporarily holding it back. So there's a lot of unknowns at the moment. We don't know how long the vaccine lasts in your body, how often we're going to have to get vaccinated. We've both been vaccinated now, with our second jab coming up in May. But I think that it's going to be a slow process back in. I don't think with this sort of magical date of the 21st of June, it means everything is fine now and we're all better and everything is normal. I can't imagine that we're going to have big parties like we used to have barbecues and things in our garden. I'm really cautious about mixing with anybody, whether they've been vaccinated or not.
I think that's going to be for many, many people.
Yeah.
Just the idea of, I mean, do you watch the TV now and see people crowded together in a pub on an old television programme, an old film?
That.
But you think, oh, you're a bit close.
I look at it and go, oh, that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, you used to be able to go as a big group in a pub or big parties and celebrations, but I don't know.
There is going to be a natural hesitance because we've not done that for 12 months.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while for us to get back into that mode.
This date in June is also not set in stone. It's not definitely going to happen. You know, we can have weddings for 30 people up from May on there. But then a month later, we can have a wedding for 130 people. Do you want to be in that reception? I'm not sure I would want to be with that many people. What's the difference in 4 weeks? Nothing has really changed very much. And I think that going back to church does not mean we're not going to be wearing face masks anymore. We probably will still have restrictions on us. And I don't want to be hugged by everybody. That sounds really bad, whether you're vaccinated or not. I don't think we're going to go back to hugging everyone again.
I think it's going to take some time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we'll see how this spring leading up to the summer pans out as well.
Yeah.
But we are going back to church and opening it up in line with the rules and regulations, but we don't see any reason to rebel against those at the moment.
No.
So we will be opening up at some stage in the summer back to good old church.
Yeah. Anyway, you have to watch this space, see what happens, just like everybody else does. And hopefully it won't be as bad as we think, that things will work out. Yeah.
Right, lockdown haircuts. You may have noticed that I've had a haircut. Actually, only those with very good eyesight will have noticed I've had a haircut because there's not a lot left to cut, is there really?
No, you could do with a bit of mine. I've got stacks of hair.
Louise is looking for me to cut hers, but I don't think I'm brave enough because I want him
to lob off about 6 inches, but he's not keen to do it. We've been doing haircuts all through lockdown for the kids as well. I used to do it when they were little. I'd just line them all up and give them all a buzz cut. Now they're all a little bit fussy and they like it all sort of, what's it called, graded on the side or something? Well, I can't do all that faffy stuff, but I have managed haircuts without them complaining too much.
They've all got their favourite barbers now as well, haven't they? The favourite places to go.
Yeah, it costs us a fortune now. But the thing is, everybody is in the same position. There's nothing that we can do about it. I mean, what was the name of that person on TV that had really, really wild hair? He looked like a mad professor. But I noticed in that interview with Jon and Lou that they've both got really long hair now, haven't they? I think it looks good.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with long hair.
Are you calling Jon a mad professor?
Maybe he is a mad professor, I don't know.
He was a professor in university,
there you go.
But
I think that with the sort of, I think haircuts make people feel better. I think,
without doubt.
And I think it's just adding to this continual sort of long, drawn out, grey type. I mean, we're in winter as well.
We're counting down the days now to April the 12th when we can all go back to get our haircut.
I don't know. I'm wondering if people are just they're going to be overloaded and not able to cope. But you can come to Chez Louise and I will chop it off or give you a buzz cut.
And we will feature the photographs here. In fact, if you've got a mad haircut,
we would love to see your hair.
We'll show some next week.
It can't be as bad as ours anyway. Anyway, that's it for this week. And we will be back next time. We don't know who we're interviewing next time, but I'm sure it'll be equally as good as today. So I hope you have a blessed week. Stay safe, and we will see you next time.
Bye.